This is Musical Talk.
Musical Talk.
The UK's independent musical theatre podcast.
Musical Talk. The UK independent musical theatre podcast.
Welcome to Musical Talk. My name is Nick Hudson. I'm joined here by my good friend Thos Ribbits. Hello, Thos.
Hello.
How are you?
And to everybody.
Yes.
And a Merry Christmas, even if it's not Christmas when you're listening.
And God bless us, everyone.
Yes.
Haven't seen you for yonks. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you very much.
Good.
Indeed. Yes.
Welcome to the Musical Talk
That was
studio.
exciting, wasn't it? Further updates follow. I'm still fine.
Follow him on Twitter at Musical Talk Thos, and you'll find out more about his state of mind. We're going to be doing another retrospective show this year. We've looked forward into 2013, and now we're going to look back into 2012, as the title of this episode would suggest. Thos is going to share his thoughts on many great deal of shows that he saw in 2012. But to stop this episode going into 2015, we're going to play a little game, aren't we, Thos?
Well, apparently, yes. I believe a format might be a better way of putting it. A strict imposition is being placed upon my natural freedoms. I am a free man. I am not a number.
Thos will have a number of 2 minutes to share his thoughts on each show that he wishes to talk about.
Would it be handy to explain briefly the kind of order? I mean, we'll go through it anyway, but just so you know, when we agreed that we'd be talking about the shows and my experiences of musicals in 2012, what I did first was just try and remember the shows that really resonated with me.
Good start, Thos.
Yes. Well, no, I did it instead of looking through my lists and my files.
The ones that immediately spring to mind.
Which ones have jumped into my mind, and therefore I'm going to try and speak, when I speak about those, which will be the early ones in this episode, they will be the ones which really came back to me, and in a way, you know, they're the ones that are, if not immortal, are certainly destined to outlive tortoises. Whereas in the second half, shall we say, those shows are the ones I've picked from my wider lists that I've got. Now, it's not a complete and comprehensive list of everything I've seen this year. That would be ridiculous. And for the most part, the shows I've identified are fun shows or happy shows or shows that I've enjoyed. But there are one or two that maybe weren't quite as good. And I may try to explain why as we go along.
So 2 minutes on each musical. Are you ready, Thos?
No.
Okay, well, no time like the present, so...
I'm having a cup of tea! And baking a potato.
I'm having a glass of wine. I'm not, listeners. No. But 2 minutes on each musical, starting right now.
Well, the first one I've got on my list, and it's one that came to mind immediately when I started thinking about it, was Newland. Newland the musical.
By Newley.
And, well, nothing to do with Anthony Newley on this occasion, but as listeners will remember, that was my pick of the Fringe this year, and it's hardly surprising that that's come straight to my mind again. What did I like about it? That's a very good question, which you didn't actually ask me, Nick, but I'm very happy to answer it as though you had. I was just surprised by it, because it was just a remarkable score. I loved the words, and I loved the music, and I loved the ethos of the show. It's about...
What was it about, quickly?
Well, actually, it's about... it's a Wild West musical, which wouldn't necessarily drag me in at all. It's not an era I'm particularly excited by, but there was enough
you weren't
comedy.
There with guns blazing, you could say.
No, but there was enough comedy in it and enough seriousness. You know, there's some good stuff going on about human relations, and the young writing gentleman behind it, Grant Martin and Tom Hiron Towers. I must remember to. I always
been there, I think.
I often pronounce his name wrong. Have proved themselves to be top-notch professional musical theatre writers. I'm absolutely delighted by the show. I really was. I went to see it, I think, 3 or 4 times. Such was my delight for it. And I'm waiting for it to come somewhere.
And now we have the Blazing Saddles musical, which is meant to be happening, apparently.
Oh, sorry, is Mel Brooks is still
doing them.
Dredging his barrel, is he?
The 12-barrel. Or 10 barrel.
Yeah, well, he obviously deserves to be on the front end of a double barrel, as far as I'm concerned. But yes, well, where will you find a man of similar caliber?
So you saw that at the Edinburgh Fringe.
I did several times,
and that was your highlight.
It's just a marvellous score, and I'd say it evokes an atmosphere which is rare for a British production to do in anything. You know, Wild West is not something that's a very British thing, and only two British things I've ever seen have done it, and that and Carry On Cowboy, bizarrely. Oh, there's me 2 minutes.
There's your 2 minutes. Good fun, this. I think it's a you still...
Well, it is at the beginning. Let's see what everyone feels like at the end.
You ready for your next choice, Thos? Let's go.
Well, my next show is a show which is a better known show. It's The Mystery of Edwin Drood, and for me, this was the big surprise of the year. It came to London's Arts
playing
Theatre.
on Broadway, we should say. Right?
Is it now?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know the score. I didn't know anything about it except the conceit, which is that it's the unfinished Dickens play turned into a musical, and therefore you, the audience, help decide how it ends. And then there's different songs, or at least different lyrics.
Written by Rupert Holmes, who did Curtains and lots of other...
Well, he wrote the books of lots
Yes.
of other shows, and he wrote the music and
Lyrics.
lyrics here. I didn't know what to expect, except I thought it would be an interesting show. And by Jove, it was an interesting show, but it was a brilliant show. I was completely swept away. And once again, I went originally with Keith Arrowsmith, another presenter of this programme, because there was a cheap deal. And I was so glad he suggested it, because it turned out to be a cracking show. And I went to see it again. I even took a friend of mine who's a private detective to see it. Well, he likes to see how people are doing it, you see. It's all about a detective.
And he didn't get it right.
Well, in some people describe it... No, some people describe it as... the book as being one of the fathers of detective fiction in literature. So it's interesting to see it as a musical. But I tell you what it's got. It's got brio and gusto. There are very few sort of slow ballads. Even when there are ballads, there's a certain oomph to them and a cleverness. And there's an awful lot of up-tempo numbers. It evokes the musical, which is obviously what the conceit is. You're watching a musical troupe put on The Mystery of Mr. Edwin Drood. And so it has so much fun with the music hall, which is something I love anyway. And certainly the songs, I mean, I think There You Are is a very famous song. You know, a lot of people know it, which is the opening number. But so much of it, the sadness is it's almost impossible to get the CD in this country.
Sadness is your time is up, Thos.
Indeed.
I wouldn't be surprised if a Broadway cast recording happened of
A new one.
of this show. So
Yes, it will be jolly good.
yes, we'll be on the lookout for that. You ready for your next?
I am.
your
I'm
next-
always ready.
Your next soliloquy, Thos. Here we go. Go.
Well, this is another Edinburgh show and another one of my 5-star shows. Once again, totally different scale. You know, if Edwin Drood is sort of seen as a West End musical, a Broadway musical, a big musical, then Some Small Love Story is the complete antithesis of that. It's 4 people. It's not a set. It's not even a narrative. It's 2 relationships about love. One is a boyfriend and a girlfriend, which is broken up because someone dies, and another one is an elderly man who loses his wife, and it's one of his grandchildren watching his decline.
But aren't we seeing a lot of musicals like this, not nowadays, but in the past, with things like I Love You, You're Perfect, Now Change, and now Lift, the musical playing at the Soho Theatre? There seems to be a lot of
Introspective?
relationship musicals.
Yes, but
What was the-
how many love stories, and you know, forgive me, they're nearly always about love or some kind of relationship. How many of them are about familial love? You know, I watched my grandfather decline. That you know, that inter-family love. It isn't all just romantic
Platonic love.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a different kind of love entirely. How can I just? It is the perfect sweet show. It is the intimacy of just having 4 people in front of you, emoting and relating. And I'm not a hugely emotional person, but it is a genuinely touching show. I saw it in a boiling hot room in the middle of summer in Edinburgh, which, believe it or not, was extremely warm this last year. And it was sold out. And at the end, I would have said 80% of the audience were in tears. It's that kind of moving show because it's so simple. That is its secret. It is some small love story. It couldn't describe itself better.
But you never saw the Love Story musical?
The Love Story?
Love Story by Howard Goodall.
No. That's not something that came my happy way, I'm afraid, if I may say. But Some Small Love Story is coming back to London, so you'll be able to see it soon.
Do we know where?
The Arts, I believe. It's on national tour until, and I'm going to be doing an episode about it in the next few weeks.
Good, we'll look out for that. Ready for your next choice?
Yes.
Good, go.
Well, this is a show about which I've recently done an episode of Musical Talk, but one of the... Oh, I love this show. In Touch the Musical by Dougal Irvin. So you'll have heard of so much of what I've got to say positively about this, but this is one of those shows where the book absolutely shines. Now, don't get me wrong, Dougal Irvin can do no wrong. I think his songs are marvellous. I think his lyrics are marvellous. I love I love that Dougal Irvin sound. I really do. And I wouldn't necessarily describe myself as a guitar lover, and that being his principal instrument, although, of course, he can do everything else. But this book was so multi-layered, so gripping, so intelligent. And you probably know the story. I saw Act 1 in Workshop in Edinburgh in 2010. and it finally was produced in its 2-act version
so
in London.
Desperate to get back.
I saw it twice. It was my pick of the Fringe that year, funny enough. And I've been waiting for it to be finished, and it was finally finished last year, and I was in no way disappointed. When I saw it was on at the Bridewell Theatre, I was just ecstatic, because I had waited 2 years, and it's a show I have thought about a lot, wanting to know how two bizarrely disparate stories, so, you can see the resonances with some small love story in some sense, which is two different stories. This has two different stories which amazingly come together in a way that I don't think you'd ever guess during Act 1. And then turns out to have layer upon layer upon layer. It's science fiction, it's quasi-religious, it's got there's parables in it, there's predictions in it, there's accurate predictions. It's because it's existed for so long now that some of the things that Dougal spotted or predicted have actually come true in some senses. He noticed that followers before Twitter really took off was coming in. So he, it's got so much going for it. And the reason I picked it more than anything else is because I remember sitting in the auditorium after the show had finished, talking to David Kingsmill, and realising as we were discussing it that there was a layer. Look, there's another layer. Oh, look, there's another layer. Oh, look, there's this extra element of meaning. It was just brilliant. It just
And did you hear from Dougal that was intentional, or is that your postmodern reading of the piece? Before we move on to your next choice.
Oh, now that's a very question. He didn't answer that question overtly because I didn't ask him that question specifically. But he did go on to say that how nice it was to have things he'd put in spotted. So I can only assume it's too good to be an accident.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's move on to your next choice, Thos.
Well, if In Touch is all about the future and science fiction, my next choice is
Out of Touch.
Well, in a strange sense, yes. It's several hundred years old. It's Handel's opera Julius Caesar.
Oh, that great hit!
Yeah. Except, well, it's currently on at the English National Opera in its traditional sense, but it had been camped up by a German gay choir, at Edinburgh. I went to see it on an absolute punt. On a punt, because I didn't know if I was going to enjoy it, but I thought I'll give it a whirl. That's the great thing about Edinburgh. You can go and see things you just don't think you're ever going to see, or wouldn't normally go and see if you're in London or wherever.
Or ever see again.
And they'd taken this opera, all male cast, and they had just pumped it full of comedy, innovation. As I said, I interviewed the director at the time, and I was so delighted by it. They were all wearing dungarees, but half of them are Egyptians and half of them are Romans. And when they were Romans, they had these kind of breastplates. Basically they had a square rectangle of card on their chest. And they turned it round, and they had sort of Roman armour breastplates. If they were Egyptians, they turned it round and had a bare torso and a sort of loincloth. On there. Well, yeah, but a loincloth. Then when they needed to do a filmed insert to tell you how the plot was going in English, because it was all sung in the original German, they put all the screens together and then project video onto it in slightly broken but very funny English. They then sort of gave you a carry-on film style catch-up of what you've been seeing. And so when you've seen a gay German dressed as Cleopatra in a set of dungarees, singing to you in German and then having it explained to you on video, you think this wouldn't be very good.
Your life is complete, Thos.
Well, in a sense, but I had no expectation. When I was born, on the first few years of my life, I had no expectation I would ever see this show. But when I have seen it, and when I did see it, it rewarded me at every level. I have to say, it was fun, it was brilliant, and it opened the door to me for a show I'd never seen, and never am likely to watch close speech marks again.
Sounds miraculous. Wunderbar, you could say.
Wunderbar.
Yeah. That's Cole Porter.
It is.
Yes. Onwards and upwards, Thos.
Well, the next show is a show that you will know. It's a show you have seen, and you've probably seen this production. It was last summer's production of Sweeney Todd.
Yes. With
the great Michael Ball and the amazing Imelda Staunton. And the reason I picked Sweeney Todd...
Mama Rose, of course, who we hope she's going to pick up.
She's going to be, but not in that show. No. That would just jar. That would be very odd.
I have a dream, Sweeney!
Sing out, Louise! I can't hear you in the furnace! what I loved about this Sweeney Todd was it revived my interest in Sweeney Todd. I have, and I've said this on record several times, I have been over Sweeneyed for many years.
We've all been Sweeneyed out.
We've all been Sweeneyed out. And so when this came to London, I thought, oh, Lord, not another Sweeney. I'm not going to bother. I actually said I wasn't going to go in and see it. But a friend of mine said, I want to go and see it. Would you like to come with me? And I thought lazily, well, I'm not going to lift a finger to do anything about it. But yes, I'll go along if you're going to do all the arrangements. And so he very kindly did. And we went along, and I didn't, you know what you're going to get. I thought I'd enjoy it to the level I would enjoy it. What I didn't realise was we were going to get a tour de force from Imelda Staunton. But actually, let's say it, Michael Ball has really proven himself. I mean, he's always been a great singer, and he's been expanding his portfolio of characters. We've had him, fully dragged up. We've had him light romantic in Passion years ago. But to watch this Michael Ball is amazing. I heard a story, someone came out of it really disappointed that they hadn't seen Michael Ball because the actor playing Sweeney Todd was so grim and vicious and nasty and brutal. And the person they were with said, no, that was Michael Ball.
He was acting, dear. He was doing his job.
But he was so different, and he is. It goes to show, actually, that he's a brilliant, versatile actor as well as one of our foremost musical singers.
What I loved about the show was that it was this might sound silly, but it was fully staged.
Yeah.
And I've never seen a fully staged production of Sweeney Todd.
Oh, have you not?
With sets and costumes and actors not playing instruments.
And of course, it was updated to the 30s, which worked really well. That drudge of the industrial world worked brilliantly. Well, the next show is a show you've also seen, and it's actually we're going to go through a little run.
Ghost.
We're going to go through a little run of shows now, which I've seen in the West End and either enjoyed or not enjoyed, but then saw in Edinburgh and enjoyed really a lot.
And talk about the show now.
Right. The next show is the 25th annual Putnam Spelling Bee. Yes. There. All of those words in some order. That's right. That's the show. And I saw it at the Donmar only 2 or 3 years ago, I think it was, and thought it was very, very good. But I didn't live it. I didn't go home with it, as it were. I saw it, thought, hurrah, but I didn't really think of it again. I saw it was on in Edinburgh this year. I thought, well, I'll give that another whirl. And it was the perfect venue. It was one of the larger venues in Edinburgh, Fringe.
8 seats.
But that's the point. It was also, although one of the larger ones, it didn't swamp it. So you actually did feel that you were in a church hall, which even the Donmar Warehouse can't quite achieve. So, we thought we were in a school hall, and it was just beautifully done. And it just had that extra level of intimacy, which you can't get in a West End theatre, even the small ones.
But I thought the Donmar created that very well, because my first experience with 20 annual 5th Putnam Spelling County Bee was seeing it in a real proscenium arch theatre. So I've gone from that setting to seeing it in the very immersive production of the Donmar Warehouse.
Well, I was right up in what you wouldn't call them the gods at the Donmar, but they are the highest galleries, and I felt I was watching it from above.
I was front row of the stalls, so I was really wrapped.
Oh, there
in
you
it.
are then. Yeah,
great show though.
But yes, it was a great show, but I got so much more out of it in the Edinburgh show, and I have to say this, better than London. And that's no way to denigrate the West End version, the Donmar version. But it was a show that really came to life, and intimacy wins, and you really did root for the people who've been pulled out of the audience. You did root for the teddy bear character, who was so beautifully, sweetly played. It came to be. It manifested perfectly.
I have to say, I saw Jazzy Chaperone in the West End, and then I saw it at the Arts Educational in an immersive production, and it worked 25,000 times better.
Well, don't preempt me, because that show may be on the list.
Okay, well, let's see. Go.
Well, not immediately, because we're going to go... But it's exactly the same issue. Bat Boy. I've seen Bat Boy in the West End at the Shaftesbury Theatre, and a friend of mine was even in it, John Barr, who's a brilliant actor, I think.
And Williams was in it as well.
Indeed. Well, we knew the casting, yes. Although at different times we didn't know each other. But my word, I thought it was a dreadful show, actually. When I saw it in London, I thought this doesn't cohere in any way whatsoever. It's just a mess. It's a series of pastiche songs sewn together in the weakest possible way. And even though we got the amazing Darren, what's his name, the chap who's been doing it for 1,000 years in America, it just... I thought it fell to pieces. And Act 2, dreadful. I saw it in London. I saw it in Edinburgh, though. I saw it in Edinburgh, once again, in that medium-sized space that you can find in Edinburgh. Full up. Brilliant. And I suddenly thought, oh, there is a really clever show here. It's never going to be the greatest show in the history of the world, but I can see that it actually holds together. There was the chap who played Batboy was amazing. He'd shaved all his hair off, bless him, and he was wearing the fangs.
You can relate to that, Thos.
I can relate to that, absolutely. Although, forgive me, I don't mind me saying. I hope he won't mind me saying if he's listening, but he was stunning to look at, even though he was disguised as a bat. He was a good-looking man. But he put so much into that show. There was gibbering on, when he was in his battish mode. His pronunciation was perfect when he
turned into Noel Coward.
Yeah, well, in a sense, that is what happens. It's all bow tie and it's. But once again, the intimacy of it worked, and the show was cleverly thought out, and it didn't lose itself in its setting and staging, which it did in London.
But what made it? I mean, we have to say it's written by Lawrence O'Keefe, who wrote the wonderful songs for Legally Blonde, of course. But what made it a series of pastiche songs in London to a very clever score in Edinburgh?
I think because you don't connect with the story or the characters in the story. I mean, they're not, they're quite broadly written. But in London, you lose them in the stage, and therefore you're just hearing the songs, and the narrative doesn't really support it. Whereas when you're seeing it much more closely, you can start feeling for the characters, and that just knits things together.
Okay, well, let's move on.
Well, this is the last of the three shows who fall into the category of better in Edinburgh, because Batboy was as well. And it is, let's see, The Drowsy Chaperone, young man. Now, we all saw it in London when it was on with EP. And I was left cold. I think I've told the story before that I went to see
you
that.
Left humming another song.
Yeah, I came out humming another score. It reminded me of the 1920s, but not enough for me to remember the score. I mean, there's a few things in it, and we all remember sort of Showstopper or whatever it's called.
Show Off. Yeah,
Show Off. Amazing piece of staging in London that was, but I don't think the show worked well enough. And once again, it's because it was lost in the theatre it was playing in, I think. So this story is going to repeat itself. I saw it in Augustine's, I think it was, which is a nice medium-sized venue in Edinburgh, and exactly the same thing happened. It was just intimate enough for you to engage. I mean, the characters aren't really in any. I am Alfonso, not a real character.
But the man in the chair is a very touching character.
Well, he was this time, yes. I actually didn't find Steve Pemberton that touching.
Well, I saw it with Bill Martin, who is the man in the chair, because I don't know if you know the story of The Drowsy Chaperone.
Go on.
He wrote this musical for his wife as a wedding present.
Oh, right.
About a wedding, and all the characters are actually people he knows who played
Alfonso.
Yeah. But Alfonso, I mean, he's more of a 1920s pastiche of that. I mean, he's in Top Hat and he's in all those other sorts of shows. So I saw the show originally and I thought it was incredibly clever, and I'm glad that you've finally come round to it.
But it's all about the staging, I think, and that worked really well. And you're right. The man in the I didn't have a chance to interview them, unfortunately, because it was one of the last shows I saw, and I had to catch a train. But they were beautiful, wonderful, cleverly done, and the comedy, and also slightly shorter. They abridge it, and they got rid of that ridiculous Act 2 opening with when they all turn into Madame Butterfly.
There's actually did they have the bit where, I know we're breaking our own rules here, but did they have the bit?
You're breaking them, Nick. You're breaking them.
So they had the bit. So they cut the My Fair Lady Pygmalion pastiche when it goes wrong and he puts the wrong record on. Did they have that?
Yes, I didn't read that as Pygmalion. The version I remember in London was they were all doing this kind of sort of the King and I stuff.
Well, they were doing the King and I, but it was also a reference to Professor Higgins teaching.
Oh, right.
So it's a kind of amalgamation of all those kind of old 40s, 50s musicals.
Good guess, Nick.
Let's go on before I say any more.
Well, back to Dougal Irvine. Edinburgh has a few regular shows these days, and Departure Lounge is one of them. We've discussed Departure Lounge a lot on this programme, so is there much more to say? Well, only this year we saw a Departure Lounge which Dougal himself hadn't been involved in. So it wasn't self-produced. He didn't have any involvement in it except to give it his blessing. Other people had seen it, loved the show, wanted to bring it up. And so we saw the show with a different interpretation. The characters did the same things, but just having an independent group shows you things in a show which you may not have seen before. So these were, in a strange way, much more laddish, these performers, because they were quite laddish in real life. They were, I must say, they were living up to their characters by parading up and down the Royal Mile in Edinburgh. They were all wearing kilts in order to show how Scottish they were, even though they weren't Scottish actors. And they were all topless because they wanted to attract the women, and indeed a number of the men. and it was, they were fairly lads, and they brought that to the staging. So you've got when I say gritty's not the word, but you've got a slightly more speech marks truthful laddish performance than you sometimes get with quality actors. The actors I've seen in the past have been fine and splendid, but they've been actors, and perhaps laddishness isn't always the first thing you think of when you see actors.
Well, that's what I liked about when I saw Loserville, was the very male-centric bonding role of the show, because in either...
And you were heterosexual.
Well, yeah, I mean, a very heterosexual relationship, because either musical is a homosexual relationship.
Which one?
A musical is either going to be a homosexual relationship, or it's going to be...
a heterosexual one?
A heterosexual one.
That's pretty much how real life works, isn't it?
But it was nice to see one that wasn't focused on a relationship at all. It was very Big Bang Theory, very in-betweeners. It was very male.
Friends.
Yeah. It was
by which I mean friendship. I don't mean the programme Friends. Yeah.
And
no, I like that.
I'd like to see a site-specific production of Departure Lounge done in an airport. I think that would quite... You ready for your next choice, Thos?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Doesn't sound positive, but let's give it a whirl.
Well, it is. It absolutely is positive. I was gearing up for loveliness. This is Showstopper, the improvised musical. I went to see I can't say it.
Showstopper.
That's the one I like to see. I went to see Showstopper lots of times a few years ago, and indeed we interviewed them, and they were lovely people, and they still are. And I've been to see them in Edinburgh on several occasions. They were my regular go-to people.
They got a Radio 4 programme, didn't they? They were commissioned by the BBC.
They deserve everything they get because they're marvellous. But I hadn't been to see a Showstopper for about 2 to 3 years. Not because I didn't like them, it's just I'd done it so much, and then, things drop off your radar and you start doing other things. So I hadn't been to see it. They were on, as they are every year in Edinburgh. I thought, I am going to go and see it. In fact, I went to see it twice. On both occasions, I went to see it with some of the people from Newland, who were just lovely people. Cast, crew, everyone. And each time, it was fantastic. And I'd forgotten what a hoot, what a brilliant conceit, what a perfect piece of writing. Well, it's not writing, is it? A perfect piece of performance it is. Yeah, exactly. And there I was with the Newland people who had written and slaved over this marvellous piece. And they were just stunned because there was this, bona fide, top-notch, gold-plated show going on in front of them. And, of course, it's all improvised. I mean, they have their routines and their formula, as anyone does. But I saw it twice, and they were both absolutely different shows, utterly different shows. And, let's add it, I had one of my suggestions agreed on. So, when you shout out at the beginning some of the kind of music that you want to hear, the genre.
You said Ribbits and Saywood.
I did not say Ribbits and Saywood, but I did shout music hall, and they then went on to do the world's best, speech marks, worst music. It was deliberately bad musical because the plot hinged around the fact that these two people on a bad date needed to bond, and they hadn't before they'd gone on to see the bad musical, but because it was so bad, they did bond. So it was plot specific.
Brilliant. Such a rare thing nowadays.
Yes.
Let's continue on, Thos.
Well, we're still on my list of what I dredged up from my memory because I really enjoyed them. And, of course, regular listeners to this programme will remember some of these from programmes that we've done. The Happy Prince. Now, different kettle of fish to almost everything we've said so far. And it was on in Edinburgh, but I didn't see it in Edinburgh. But I did go to a cabaret of some musicals putting on a song or two one evening at midnight, and I heard
one morning at midnight.
Yeah, well, I heard 2 songs from it and thought, this is amazing. This is stunning stuff and totally different to everything else. Very, I don't think of myself as English. I think of myself as British. I like the corporate whole, but this was specifically English music. It was specifically clever, intelligent, but simple.
Everything the British are, or English.
Well, in this case, this was a perfect show. And Sue Casson was the composer. And I was so struck by those 2 songs, I thought, I've really got to see this somewhere else. So I wrote to her, and she very kindly said, yes, let's meet for an interview. And she gave me a lovely interview, wonderful woman. And to my delight, it then came to London. So I got to see it just before Christmas. And it's a children's fable. It's by Oscar Wilde. The story is sweet, but it's just what Sue has managed to do with the show. I'm not paying it full tribute enough by the way I'm describing it, but it is perfection through simplicity, actually, that show. And surprisingly moving. It really, It touches upon some truths, intimate truths, about what it is to be lonely or friendly or have yearnings or to be sad. You know, the human condition. Frankly, Sue Casson really is a name to be reckoned with, in my view. And I go and see The Happy Prince.
Good. You're getting used to this, aren't you, Thos?
Oh, my timing's getting better, isn't it?
Yes. Let's tally on.
Well, this is the last of the shows that came to mind when I was thinking. And it's not going to surprise you if I say Gilbert and Sullivan. How we love them. Wake up, boy. Wake up. Out comes
Sorry, I was in a bad dream. I thought you mentioned Gilbert and Sullivan again.
I'm going to have to get my taser out if you're not a good boy. Now, this is an unusual Gilbert and Sullivan. It's Utopia Limited. It's one that people haven't heard of. It's the penultimate one. It very rarely gets revived. In fact, it was the first time I had ever got to see it. I'm 42 years old. I had never seen this one. I knew the score. I've heard the recordings, but I'd never seen it. So I was so delighted that it came on in Greenwich with the Centenary Musical, Centenary Company's version of it. What was fantastic and so surprising, and the reason it stuck in my mind as being brilliant, is because it's so contemporary. It's about, amongst other things, people being companies rather than individuals, people turning themselves into companies so they don't have to, they maximise their profits. This was all on during the Jimmy Carr scandal, and all these people, civil servants who are paid, who are companies and paid themselves. There's a joke in Utopia Limited about people turning themselves into companies, then going in to buy products, and then immediately winding themselves up as companies so they don't have to pay for them, so everyone goes bankrupt. But the show's more than that. You've got a chap who, you've got a scandal newspaper, basically. This is when the news of the world's gone under. You've got the Leveson inquiry, and yet here we are, Gilbert writing 130 years ago. There's this man who he's being blackmailed essentially into writing scurrilous stories about himself. So he publishes his own scandal newspaper. He's the king of Utopia. And then he has to buy all the copies to make sure they don't fall into the hands of the public. But one does, and that then ensues as one of the that's one of the plot points. So you've got corruption. You've got senior ministers with their hands in the till. You've got newspaper corruption. As I say, you've got tax avoidance. Tell me, does that ring any bells with what's going on now?
Only at the end of 2 minutes. Well, I have to say, Dougal Irvine, you're less impressive now if Gilbert's able to predict things 100 years before they happened.
Well, I don't think... No, they were happening then as well, but...
These companies don't get followed on Twitter, do they?
Companies?
Yes, in Utopia Limited.
Oh,
it's not that foreshadowy.
No, it hasn't mentioned that.
So on with your less memorable shows, I guess you can call them, couldn't you, Thos?
Yeah, these are the ones I had to go back to my list of what I'd seen and dress them up. Some are good and some are bad. That's not to say these shows aren't good, but one or two aren't.
Okay, let's start with your first one.
Which isn't, unfortunately.
Okay.
I'm going to talk about Maury Eston's Titanic, because last year was the anniversary, the centenary, of the sinking of the Titanic. Incidentally, I walked through HMV, which I hope very much doesn't go under. We have an HMV in London, and there was a video. It said Titanic.
Nice choice of words.
Well, it said Titanic, the mystery solved. It was the name of a DVD, and I thought, there is no mystery. It's pointless. Anyway, Titanic, the musical... I actually saw it on the day of the sinking. It was in the afternoon.
Timed, wasn't it?
Yeah.
To have the events coincide with the story.
With the centenary, yeah, absolutely. Well, I saw it I saw the matinee rather than the evening version, but I saw the matinee on the day it sank 100 years later, and it's awful. It doesn't mean to be, but it is. I mean, there's
Most shows don't mean to be awful.
No, very few
they
shows.
are.
But there's a final chorus where everyone who's lived or died comes on and sings Titanic. Yes, yeah, we got that. If you hadn't worked that out by now, you really shouldn't have come to the show. There was a couple of made-up characters. You could see someone had said, the problem is that actually the book. I'm not going to blame Mary Eston at all. The score's adequate. It's not my absolute cup of tea, but the book is very, very clunky.
Do we know who did the book?
I'm afraid I don't.
Good.
But, someone said, we've got to have some British people and we've got to have some American people. And if they're British, you're going to have this class and this class and this class. But we won't have more than one couple from each class. So no one actually ever properly interacts. The classes on the whole don't mix with each other. They mix with themselves.
And doesn't the opening of the show go on for about 8 weeks as well?
Yes, that's right. How many coconuts were on board? 4! How much coal? Hang on, I'll come back, count it and sing it to you. And there was some ham. Yes, there was plenty of ham. That was the actors, unfortunately.
Yes. Do you think the fault lied in the production? Because, I mean, you're talking earlier about, the production makes it a bit better, for example. So if you maybe saw the great big Broadway production...
Well, this is a show I think needs lots of people, and it didn't have it. So, yes, it could be the production, but I think it needs a bit of tinkering with the plot. And there's no real suspense.
Because you know the ending.
You do.
Let's go on.
Well, this next show is actually one of my favourite shows. I only discovered it a few years ago, and when I see it's on, I try and go to see it. And it was on several times this year. I only got to see it once, obviously last year. And it's Curtains. And we've already mentioned the author's involvement in Edwin Drood. He's
Rupert Holmes.
Yeah, he's a detective. Well, with a name like Holmes, he'd have to be interested in detective work, but there we are.
And Rupert.
Yes. Well, Curtains is a brilliant musical, and this year I saw an amateur version of it, which was fine. I'm not going to criticise amateur shows for being amateur. It lacked the pace and the tightness needed to make it absolutely, a copper-plated brilliance. But the score really still comes out. The fun of the show really still comes out. And frankly, there's one character in it which just stands out above all, and that's the British director. And had them change my blocking? Never! I love that character.
It's been a murder. I didn't do it!
Yes.
Sorry, the director always gets blamed first.
Yes. I think that character cannot fail, and that show therefore cannot fail because of him. But I loved it all, and I already seen it. I know it. It's a show I know very well these days.
I wonder how much that character was driven by the actor who did it originally on Broadway, whose name I cannot remember, but I know it's Ed something. Very famous British comedy actor, because he could have been written as an American originally. I mean, I'm not sure. It'd be interesting.
Oh, very much so.
But I'd like to talk to Rupert actually in one.
But there's a great tradition of sending up the British director in musicals, because if you know the great musical film with Fred Astaire called The Bandwagon, they've got the brilliant Jack Buchanan, who's one of our greatest. He's our Fred Astaire, basically, the British Fred Astaire. He was one of our greatest musical performers, and he is playing. I think it's Geoffrey Cordova, a mad British director with a high temperament. So the Americans, just briefly, obviously had this stereotype of British people not being temperamental unless we're in theatre, in which case we're so over the top, you can't believe it.
Go into another Jack. We have Jack Davenport, who is in Smash, who plays a British director, and he's very, very sleeps with anyone that moves. And
male, female, or everyone?
Male. That Jack Davenport plays a male director who's very straight, but he...
right. But,
very, very temperamental and angry all the time.
Which is just not how I see theatre, darling. It's so calming.
Let's go on, Thos.
Well, the next show, Jubilee. Now, last year was Her Majesty the Queen's Diamond Jubilee, and a celebration was had by all, and most of us, all decent-minded people, enjoyed ourselves.
Bored me to death.
Did it really?
Yes.
Well, there I said. All decent-minded people enjoyed themselves.
We've got a bloody coronation coming up this year as well, which is tedious.
No, we have. What coronation have we got coming up?
It's our coronation this year.
No, she had the coronation in 1953.
Well,
it's the anniversary of the coronation. Anyway, there are very few. Well, funny enough, we had the Olympics as well. Very few musicals associated with sport. There's one musical that you can put on if you have a Jubilee coming up, and it's called Jubilee. Thank you, by Cole Porter. Actually inspired by the Silver Jubilee of George V, although only that the idea gave him the idea to do a musical about Jubilees. It was done beautifully at the Tabard Theatre here in Chiswick. But it's interesting. A Cole Porter show cannot fail to be good because it has a Cole Porter score. This show could not fail to be good because it had that Cole Porter score, and some of the songs, Begin the Begin, are, famous hits. There's one brilliant song called Why Shouldn't I, which isn't very well known, but really ought to be. It's actually one of Cole Porter's best songs. But the show itself is a little bit clunky. The actors did what they could with it, and they made a lot out of a little. But actually, the show is rather light. So I enjoyed it, but I enjoyed it for the score and I enjoyed it for the effort. But actually, I don't think you can see why this show, out of all of Cole Porter's shows, is so rarely performed and reproduced. It is partly because the licensing arrangements are all a bit strange on it as well. Somehow it never got into the canon of Cole Porter shows to go out, so you have to track it down. But having seen it, it was lovely to see it. And I doubt it'll ever be on again in my lifetime. But the score is brilliant and highly enjoyable. And there was a great deal to enjoy. It's just not quite good enough.
Have you tracked down a CD of it?
No, but I've got individual recordings of most of the songs because obviously Cole Porter songs have been covered and covered and covered and covered for years.
And 25,000 versions of Begin.
25,000 virgins do what?
Yes.
Yes.
Let's move on.
Now, I'm afraid we're back to... Well, I went to see Beauty and the Beast on stage. I've seen the film. In fact, I saw it when it first came out. And it's a curious piece. There's a lot to enjoy. It's not very sophisticated. I was surprised how few subplots there were, how absolutely black and white all the characters were. There's very little...
Ironic considering it's in animation.
Yeah, yes. But there's very little subtlety in it. Well, obviously the version I saw on stage wasn't, but it's based on one, you're quite right. But they had added the song which had been cut from the musical, which you're aware about this, I'll Be Human Again. And actually, I think that's one of the best songs in the score. I was genuinely stunned by that. There was the emotion in that song is actually more genuine. It's the yearning to be what you were and to resume your happy life from a period of stasis, which is actually much better than any of the other songs.
Do you know how that song came to be?
Tell me how that song came to be, Nicholas.
Well, it was Howard Ashman's wish to be literally human again. He wrote it when he found out he had AIDS and he knew he was dying. So he just wrote, it was his desire to become, again, what you said, what he once was, and not...
Oh, well, that could explain its strange potency, because it's genuinely potent. I know they took it out of the film because somehow or other...
It's too long or
yeah,
something.
It screwed up the timescale of what was going on in the narrative.
But they've since added it to the film, Thos. So
have they now?
I shall lend you the DVD and you can watch it in all its revised glory.
Well, I've actually gone online to iTunes and purchased the recording.
Done.
But... that alone was worth the price of entry. A friend of mine played the clock.
Cogsworth.
Indeed. And he was awfully good. So, it was nice to see people in it.
It helps.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the people in it. But frankly, at the end of the day, a few good songs in the score, which I really liked.
The opening is very strong as well.
There's a lot to commend about it. It's just actually the book is not clever enough.
And it's interesting, and we'll talk about this briefly. In the film, the Beast has no songs.
Does he not?
And in the stage show, he has quite a nice song called If I Can't Love Her, which...
Well, I think if you're going to ask a man to... Well, it's usually a man. If you're going to ask a man to wear several hundredweight of fake fur, a tail, a pair of silken shorts, and a lot of makeup...
You're in for a good night out.
Well, yeah, but you certainly got to ask... You can say, well, make it worth your while. I'll give you a number, love.
Buy him dinner first. Yeah. Let's go on with your next show. Well,
my next show is another Edinburgh show. And it's one of those shows that really shows the potential of people in Britain. It's called Armada, the musical. And as it might suggest, it's all about the Spanish Armada. Now, it featured some things which I don't like. As you know, I have a publicly stated opposition to magic. And it's actually about Dr. D, who was Her Majesty the Queen Elizabeth I's sort of...
personal illusionist.
Well, she was his astrologer. He was her astrologer, which of course was meant to be an alchemist and all the kind of stuff which has now been debunked. And indeed, he sort of accepts he's a charlatan. And that's half the fun of it. He's a politician wafting around her court, using trickery.
That's court, listeners.
Yes, using trickery and charm to get what he wants, even though he's clearly an idiot. Well, not an idiot. No, he's certainly not an idiot. Actually, showing he's clearly he doesn't have the powers he claims. The difficulty was there was a character in it called Sarah, who turns out to have the powers, and not only that, she can sort of transfer herself to different places, so she can sort of transmat herself almost. So there were elements of it I didn't like, but actually the show was so strong and so clever and so well written that I was able to overcome all of that and really enjoy it. It had some surprisingly good, strong performances. The woman who played Elizabeth I was Elizabeth I. I mean, channeling her, looked like her, sounded like her, as far as we can tell, obviously. But, as a perfect performance, the composer was playing Dr. D, and it was a juicy, juicy part, and he played it to perfection. Some marvellous songs. That's a character that you'd hired Rex Harrison to do if it had been filmed in the 1960s. And, there's a good-looking hero who you sort of...
Yeah. What was the magic like?
Well, it wasn't performed magic. It was in the narrative.
Oh, right.
But forgive me, it's a rock opera, not my normal kind of score, but it really did something. I went with David Kingsman, and we were both truly impressed. Good show.
Good. Let's go on.
Well, the next show was a good show, but it was called Bad Musical, and that was its conceit. It's been up to Edinburgh a couple of times. I hadn't seen it before, but I wanted to see it. And its conceit is it's a dreadful musical. And it lives up to that, but it does it knowingly enough so you aren't just watching rubbish. You're watching deliberate rubbish. So it's joke after joke after joke. Not every joke hits.
Is it American or English?
It's British. It's British.
British, then.
Yeah, sorry. But it's from these fair shores. And my favourite piece of the whole show was this lovely scene where our hero is he's with his mother who's dying, and she's trying but she's trying to impart through a song some the final thing that sort of propels him for the rest of the journey of the story. So I need you to go off and do this, and here are my lessons to you, and so it's supposed to be a big emotional number, but because it's set up as being cheap and poor and there's no orchestra, it's all done on CD. So there's a backing track. And it's obviously contrived to do this, but the backing track skips. So she said, so you're waiting for this sort of "Mother is Dying" song, and it's over in about 15 seconds because every time she's about to say anything significant, it just scratches forward. So the actor, who was a man playing the mother, has to sort of jump forward to that point of the song. And so 15 seconds later, the song is all over. She's got no alternative but to die, so she has to very obviously die suddenly. And of course the actor then has to say, "Oh, I've learned so much from my mother's final words. Of course I'll follow her request." So they carry on regardless. And there's a joke about a member of the cast having stormed out at the beginning. So she's the heroine, and she's replaced by a pink balloon with a face on it on a stick. It's good.
Is it a badly written musical done ironically well, or is it a musical that's well written that goes wrong on the night?
No, it's supposed to be a 3-hour musical which has been condensed on the night because they made a booking error. They've only got 50 minutes, so suddenly they'll end up on a spaceship, or suddenly, and there's not a plot. You're not supposed
like Salad Days.
Yeah, but you're not supposed to take the plot in any way seriously or even conceive it.
So it's not like the songs are written badly, with bad scansion and things like that.
Oh no, there's no song which is written to be a bad song.
Okay.
It's all the act.
It just goes wrong.
The act. It either goes wrong or something happens that makes it inappropriate. But it's not a bad song because it's full of bad rhymes or anything like that. I mean, it will never win awards for being brilliant songs, but you get the point. That's not what its failure is.
Let's go on.
Well, here's a show you've heard of, Assassins.
Yes.
I believe there were 2 versions of Assassins in Edinburgh this year, and it is obviously a very popular show with any theatrical group because it's a good ensemble piece. There's no one character that really stands out over anyone else.
Apart from the narrator.
No, not even that these days. No, I think, to be honest, the narrator is a golden thread, but I wouldn't say the narrator stands out. And I've seen thousands of versions of Assassins, some of which have been brilliant, some of which have been not.
Thousands of versions?
Maybe not thousands, but I've certainly seen quite a few now. And I saw one in Edinburgh, and I enjoyed it. But, let's be honest, the reason it's on my list of things to remember this year is because it's a good score. And we've discussed it before. I think it's sometimes last great score. And even then, there are weaknesses with it. I still think there are moments when, I think that you need a song for the John Wilkes Booth bit at the end, post Lincoln, and that isn't there. That's all done through the narrative, and I think that's a lost opportunity, and I've said so before. But
there might have been a song once, for all we know.
There may well have been, yeah. But it feels like a gap, Oh, lovely Sondheim stuff, lovely Sondheim stuff, lovely Sondheim stuff. Oh, ending. Where is the song? Where's the song gone? But I enjoyed it because I always do. You have to go a long way to make Assassins go badly, I think. And the group was able to support it extremely well. The chap, they had some funny-looking people. There's one fellow who actually looked like the Joker from Batman, and he had a very kind of odd face.
Do you mean Jack Nicholson or Heath Ledger?
I mean the cartoon ad.
Jack Nicholson.
No, I mean the one with the long, narrow face. Yeah. So not really. I wouldn't have called that Jack Nicholson. Cesar Romero. No. However, it wasn't the best production by any means, but it's one of those shows, as I say, you don't have to come in at 100%.
As long as they sing the words and sing the notes, it's going to be a good production.
Yeah, and well, I won't say any more then, if you're going to be like that.
Onwards and upwards.
Well, a show I very nearly watched on television when it was televised about 5 years ago, but only got about 3 minutes in.
Acorn Antiques.
No, Our House.
Oh, okay, yes.
By Madness. But I saw it on stage this year.
At the Savoy?
At the Bridewell.
Oh, okay.
And I quite enjoyed it. But I enjoyed it because I actually thought the score was better than I expected. We know what you're going to get from a Madness song.
I personally think, and many do, it's the best jukebox musical ever written.
Yes. Well, yes. In many ways, I'll agree with that. That still doesn't make it as good as a proper musical.
No.
And actually, I thought the plot was a bit stultifying. It's sliding doors, essentially. Here's one chap with his 2 parallel lives, and I believe the lesson to be learned from is if you're a rotter, your mum will die. And it was as subtle as that. So I wouldn't exactly say that. I learnt not to be a bad man because of Our House. That's nonsense, obviously. But the score was surprisingly good and the songs worked really well. Someone had put them in carefully and with a bit of thought and made them work in the context, the new context that they were being prized into.
Well, it's Tim Firth who wrote Calendar Girls and stuff like that, so he's...
Fine. Well, he obviously knows what he's doing.
Knows what he's doing.
Yes, he's a good mechanic, let's put it that way. And Madness songs sit very nicely on my ear. I'm not a pop fan, but actually Madness, I find... There's some genuine musical skill going on there. Someone knows how to do melodies. Someone knows how to do lyrics. I don't know who they are, but they did it quite nice. He didn't do it all, did he?
Yeah.
All right. What about the rest of the group then? They just walk around wearing unusually sized trousers?
They just play the instruments.
Oh, right. Well, Mr. Suggs did a jolly good job, I thought. So it was only an amateur production. So basically, thumbs up to the score. I'm not going to say thumbs down to the plot, but I was going to say... One more draft, please.
It certainly. I mean, the plot certainly dares to do something which had never been done before.
What, the split character thing?
Yeah, on stage.
I think you're probably right on that. I shall refer to my books and come back to you via my solicitor.
I'll do the same with mine. And of course, we have to say there was a charity production for the 10th anniversary of the musical at the Savoy Theatre.
Do we have to say that?
No.
Do we have to say it? We're legally obliged to say it.
Let's go on, Thos.
Shall we? Now, this is a musical you won't have heard of because, in a way, it's really a review of something I saw in Edinburgh. It's called The Two Most Perfect Things. And somebody had the clever wheeze of taking Britain's 2 best songwriters
Ivor Coward and Noel Novello.
You're on the button with that one, absolutely, yes. The pre-war best composers, Ivor Novello, Noel Coward, contrasted their lives in biographic terms, but what the joy was, you had 2 chaps, 2 women, in perfectly elegant dress, if I may say, in a perfectly elegant set. And bearing in mind, I saw this at 10:30 in the morning. Not your normal time for dressing up in dinner suits and and gowns, darling. I know I wasn't. It was brilliant. It was lovely. Now, there is no shortage of hearing Noel Coward in the world. If you want to hear a Noel Coward song, they've nearly all been recorded. That's not true, but most of them have been recorded either by Coward or by other people. You can find lots of them about. Ivor Novello, bless him, still just hasn't got the recordings out there you need to hear. There's quite a lot out there, but not nearly enough.
Most of them in Gosford Park.
Yes, that's true. I mean, Gosford Park, yes, gave us a handful of new recordings, which were very, very welcome. And I heard some Ivor Novello tunes I'd never heard. The jazz, I think it was called Jazz Wedding Waltz or something like that. There were a whole bunch of things which were really marvellous. So what you got to see was, and I've said this before, the 2 characters complement each other immensely. Ivor Novello is mostly heart and sentiment and a little bit of brittle comedy. Noel Coward, mostly brittle comedy, occasional bits of heart and sentiment.
And Rodgers and Hart.
If you put them together, you get Vivian Ellis, who I actually think is the best of his type, but he wasn't included in this. But actually, to hear the 2 composers' songs together, sung by men and women, singularly and together, was perfection.
With just a piano, I'm guessing?
I remember it as being just a piano. But that didn't in any way, actually, once again, that simplicity of music hid the sophistication of the writing.
Would the actor playing Noel Coward or Ivor Novello go on the piano, or were they accompanied?
My recollection was there was someone who stayed on the piano all the time, and the 4 of the actors carried on performing rather than playing.
Good. Okay, let's go on.
Let us, yes. Well, another Sondheim. We were speaking about assassins. I saw Company. Now, once again, it's very difficult to go wrong with Company. It wasn't the best version of Company, however, I've ever seen. It was the what used to be called the Royal Scottish Academy of Music and Dance has now become...
That was too long. So
well, yeah, but now they've gone for Ponce instead. They're now called the Scottish Conservatoire,
which is shorter.
And they're still very good. Now, what I love about them is every year in Edinburgh they put on a big show and 2 smaller shows. And I first fell in love with their performances. I think it was the first year I went up there, actually. Which would have been 2007, something like that, because they did a show called Iron Curtain. which should be everyone should know it. It's a brilliant musical. I loved every second of it. I can't even find a recording of it, but it's a brilliant show, much to be recommended. But they also do workshop shows. So In Touch was one of the workshop shows in 2010, and we'll be talking about one of the other workshop shows later on in today's programme. But Company was their big show. It's the one they put all their cast into, all their graduates for that year. And indeed not only that, their musicians and their stage crew. It's their musical theatre trainees do this one big production, and sometimes these are Scottish premieres. I mean, last year's Sunday in the Park with George was the Scottish premiere of that production. It had never been on in Scotland professionally. It's amazing to believe in 25 years.
So what was wrong with Company?
Pace. Beautifully acted, just foot off the throttle a little bit for some reason or other. It felt like that you could have done the whole show and knocked 20 minutes off it just by going a little bit faster. Now, it's partly because they really played up the idea of Robert as being a bit of a stoner. I don't think I'd ever really interpreted that before. That, how much of this is his drug-addled, because he's a psychedelic 60s character, how much of it is this from the occasional puff on a jazz cigarette? And how much of it was were you actually seeing? Possibly a bit too much druggery was going on in the pacing of it.
Maybe it's in your list, but Merrily We Roll Along, have you heard of it?
I didn't see that this last year.
Okay, all right. I hear it's wonderful. I think we should certainly go and check it out.
Yes, it's one of my favourite sometimes, actually.
Anyway, let's go on.
Well, this is one of the workshops at the the Scottish Conservatoire were going on, which actually turned out to be a lot more fun than The Company, to my surprise. Once again, it was a punt. The show was called Active Virgin, and because I'm not a gymnasium-going type chap, I don't think I realised at first that it was, it's about a gymnasium. And
just imagine you're in a gym with your kind of big weights and your penny farthing bicycle and stuff.
Well, I have ridden a penny farthing bicycle, but you won't see many in a gymnasium, and you certainly won't see me in a gymnasium. But in this company, there is a brand of gymnasiums called Virgin Active, and I hadn't picked that up, so I didn't know what that title meant. When it said Active Virgin, I thought I liked the idea of a passive state, which is virginity, being active, so I thought I was going to get something clever about that. I got something completely different, equally brilliant. It turned out to be another science fiction musical, fairly rare thing, and the Scottish Conservatoire is always the company that seems to roll them out. Set in the future, in a world where body fascism is almost completely compulsory. Everyone spends all their time in the gym making themselves look beautiful and really angsting about it when they aren't beautiful or if they put weight on. And, of course, they're controlled by this character called Mother, if you like, which is an avatar character created by the health computer who trains people and gets people going. But, of course, she goes slightly wrong and people start dying. So you've got this kind of science fiction detective mystery. And then a character turns up who's clearly, in a copyright-busting way, Doctor Who. He's called the Doctor.
Doctor Where?
Yeah, well, he was called the Doctor, and he turns up unexpectedly. Played interestingly by a Canadian gentleman, so it was quite a different interpretation. I remember this gentleman. He sang very nicely. He did his performance very nicely, but he had a very strong Canadian accent. And one of the things that sometimes comes up is the pronunciation of the word about as a boot. Mm-hmm. So I kept hearing the word a boot. And it was very odd, and the British audience, for the most part, were finding it a little bit difficult to attune to his accent. But there we go. But the show was brilliant. It was funny, it was clever, and it had a brilliant score. Once again, a sort of rocky score I was never expecting to enjoy. But it didn't take itself seriously. That was the secret, and I'd highly recommend it.
Good. Let's go on.
Well, back to classic shows revived. And a brave revival, 42nd Street. Now, if you know anything about 42nd Street, it's the one that's famously got the huge chorus line of tap dancing women.
On coins.
Yeah, and We're in the Money. I mean, that's his other, Lullaby
of Broadway.
Lullaby of Broadway and We're in the Money are the two big hits, although there's plenty others. Shadows on the wall, I can't see them all. That kind of thing.
Thos will be releasing a best of 42nd Street album next week.
Yes, I am Ethel Merman. Shut up, Louise! So I went to see 42nd Street, and it was put on by, it was a youth group. They were young, late teenagers, early 20s maximum, I'd say, and they put on a brilliant show. They hadn't, I don't know how they'd done it, but they'd not stinted themselves on the costumes. They had, it's a good 1930s glamour piece. It was originally the antidote to depression. You put more and more glamour on the stage. Songs about money, for goodness sake. It's all about that kind of thing. And the lure of the theatre, it's all about Tinseltown. And it's the original, I'm going to make you a star. The understudy is sacked, but she has to step back in when the lady, the proper diva, breaks her ankle on the day of the performance, all that kind of stuff. Corny as hell. Beautiful costumes, beautifully done. And every day they were on the Royal Mile in a different costume. You want to see chaps and lasses in 1920s dinner suits? Lovely. The next day they'll be in feathers, the women. Every day, different things. And the enthusiasm of the people behind it was...
This was Edinburgh,
this was in Edinburgh. And clearly the enthusiasm of it was a chap and a lass who was sort of producing it and directing it and playing in the orchestra and goodness knows what, and they had infused their cast with that enthusiasm, and that enthusiasm then came out, and the audience drew from it. So these characters were supposed to be much older than they were the actors playing them, but you didn't mind at all. It was just spot on. We were definitely coining it in whilst being in the money.
Big stage for that production?
Medium-sized stage. I don't really do big stages in Edinburgh.
The chorus line must be small then.
They had enough, but it wasn't gigantic. But it was enough to fill the auditorium.
Let's move on.
Right, I'm afraid I'm in the zone of wrong. The bad stuff. It's such a disappointment.
Good show, I saw that.
I really hate having to say shows aren't very good, because somebody will love them. But this, and I wouldn't normally...
But they're wrong.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't normally criticise a show. If I don't like a show, I generally don't talk about it very much. But if it's had a proper Broadway run, so if I don't like an Andrew Lloyd Webber, I feel he's big and bold enough to be able to take it. And it's the same with this show. This had a success on Broadway, Seussical. And I thought it was on in Edinburgh, and I thought, I'll catch that. It was on at a time that was convenient for me. I thought, I'll nip along and see that. So I nipped along and saw it, and I very nearly had to cut my own throat. And it's not because of the production, and it's not because...
Was this the 45-minute version or the...
No, we got the 2-hour version. They really hadn't cut anything out. They'd gone for it. They were doing it as a children's show. I was stunned at how little sophistication was in it. And when I say little, I mean none! None whatsoever! Now, I read Dr. Seuss books as a child. Green Eggs and Ham. Cat in Hat. Fine. I expected... When I thought Seussical would be lots of different books fused together, like Into the Woods. Actually, I thought that was the model. I thought someone had cleverly found links between this story and that story and another story and put them all together, and you have a kaleidoscope of Seuss stories. What I didn't realise was it was just 2 or 3 stories told flat. Here's the Cat in the Hat. You're going to hear the Cat in the Hat as though it was an audio book with a few songs. They can do what they bloody well like on stage, frankly. You're not getting anything more. Oh, look, Horton hears a who. Horton did hear a who. Horton heard a who for about a couple of hundred hours, it seemed to me. Oh, God, it was like watching the world end in real time. I didn't enjoy the score, the story.
Did it have the military song in it?
I can't remember. I really, please, by that stage I was ripping off my ears.
Well, it's only the 4th song or something. So.
As I say, by that stage I was ripping off my ears. It was just so childish. Well, not even clever.
Do you not think that's the idea of the show?
No.
Okay. I enjoyed the score, but we'll move on.
Well, the next show is actually a show I enjoyed a very great deal. I saw Bereavement, the musical. It's really a kind of review of songs about death, and people may remember the interview I conducted with the composer and lyricist last year, who were lovely people. They had both suffered bereavements in their childhood. And they were talking about, funnily enough, that you're not allowed to grieve in the way that you naturally want to. Society still has all these rules about how death works, what you're supposed to do and what you're not supposed to do at funerals. But then there's all these questions about after the funeral. When can you start going out again?
Agatha Christie novel.
Yeah. Well, are you allowed to? When can you start enjoying yourself? Are you allowed to have any kind of sexual feelings? When does it all finish? You're left alone after that period. They had explored all of these stages very cleverly in a very clever, funny review, several songs of which were marvellous. By the composer's admission, who I interviewed again afterwards, the day I went along wasn't the best performance. I enjoyed it a great deal, but the audience, if you pardon the expression, were a bit dead. And they had been much more lively on other days, so I just picked a bad day and that's bad form. But even then, I really enjoyed the show. It's, as I say, it's a review, so it wasn't a continuous narrative. It was almost a series of sketches, not comedy sketches per se, although there was a lot of
vignettes.
Yeah, vignettes, much better way of putting it. And there was a lot of incidental humour all the way through it.
Black comedy, I'm guessing.
Yeah, absolutely. Morning comedy, if you like, yes. How to describe it? Well, they knew that there was, just being British, you've got this sense of humour about everything. But it's about transgressing the rules of bereavement. The chap playing the piano was wearing an undertaker's top hat. So there was very much to commend it, and I'd like
the
to
piano had a body in it.
I would like to hear more from the people behind it.
Your timing is spot on, Thomas.
Thank you.
Let's go on.
Well, we're coming down to the last stretch. This is another show that was a disappointment, and this will surprise you because it's Gilbert and Sullivan. Except it's not Gilbert and Sullivan. Somebody had done...
It's Gilbert O'Sullivan.
Well, I like him as well, funny enough. But no, it was called Gilbert and Sullivan in Briefs, and I expected really to enjoy this.
You expected smut.
No, I didn't expect smut. I didn't expect smut at all. I expected someone to have done something very, very clever and combine... Not just in medleys, but, forgive me, there's a famous joke you can play if you're a Gilbert and Sullivan fan. You can sometimes set one set of lyrics to the tune of another song. I am the very model of a modern major general fits very nicely into My Eyes Are Fully Open to My Awful Situation from Radical. So, you can find other versions of this. So, I was expecting someone to have done a clever kaleidoscope of, if you like, a fusion of the Gilbert and Sullivan operas. It was advertised as being all 14 GNS operetta in an hour. And it was that, but in the blandest possible way. They had a group of singers who sang a song from Thespis, who sang a song from Trial by Jury, who sang a song from... Or they may have sung 2 or 3 songs stuck together, and they gave us...
As Daleks.
If you like. And because the Mikado's the most popular... we were treated to 15 minutes. We were given the whole Mikado in brief snatches, which meant some of the others really went down to almost nothing. And then they, for a show that purported to be about Gilbert and Sullivan and presumably played to people who like Gilbert and Sullivan, they then dissed the final shows, Utopia Limited and The Grand Duke, and gave the standard view of 50 years ago, which they're both rubbish. So they...
it sounds to me like you wanted something like the reduced Shakespeare Company would do, where they...
Yeah.
They do...
Or even cleverer than that, but something a bit cleverer than just a song. And to make matters worse, they did that thing I hate so much, which is... when
jazz hands.
No, I don't know. I don't have any problem with jazz hands. You're talking blasphemy, boy. No, I hate... I'll tell you what I hate briefly. I hate it when they feel they have to add an extra plot, which is that the actors are having some kind of fallout. So we had a male actor and a female singer, and the idea was they had a relationship, and now they were spending the rest of the show trying to sabotage each other. It means you're not confident of your material. Sadly, it promised everything and gave me nothing.
Says Musical Talk. Should we go on, Thos?
We ought.
Yes.
2 more shows to go. And one of them is The Picture House. Now, this was a student concoction. It had been... They were a group of acting students, and they had, at the end of their time, been asked to come up with 3 different shows, which they then workshopped. And one of the shows they thought was good enough to then develop further. And it was set in the Second World War, and that's fairly unusual even to today. Second World War musicals are not that common in Britain, and they haven't always been successful. There was one I saw a couple of years ago in Edinburgh, which was, how shall I describe it? Big Pants! This wasn't Big Pants. It was a little bit derivative in terms of music occasion.
Like baggy trousers and madness.
How very American of you. It was a little bit derivative in 1 or 2 cases. I liked the score a great deal, but it had echoes of Noel Coward and things like that, and it was deliberately doing that. One of the songs actually started with a snatch of music from Moonlight Becomes You, which is an Noel Coward song. The plot, I'd have liked to have... It was one of those stories, again, that just felt like it needed one more draft. Just before the war starts, a man and a woman get married. They buy the old failing picture house cinema in this town. When the war comes, he's called up, he's captured, so we don't know if she's dead or alive. His wife keeps the place running. She has to take some people on, so she has these interviews with various people who have been rejected by the draft, as they say, who haven't been called up. And they've all got designs on her. They all think they can inveigle her to give them the theatre through love and romance or general conniving. And then the husband comes back. And it all ends up happily. I enjoyed the show a great deal. It had beautiful atmosphere. They developed an atmosphere. You really felt you were in a sort of flea pit. Well, no, that's what they were in those days. A flea pit theatre. It just needed a bit of polishing on the narrative. And I can't stress enough how important getting the book right is on a musical. So many people think that you can wing that bit, and you can't.
Final show, Thos.
Final show. One of my favourite shows. But it was only an amateur version of it. How to succeed in business without really trying.
Finally got to see a production in this country.
Well, I have seen them before, but only amateur versions. But when are we going to get a professional version? It's been revived. It was on originally. It was the big hit of 1961 on Broadway, and then it was revived about 10, 15 years ago with Matthew Broderick, and that was brilliant. And
on Broadway.
And that didn't come to London. And then, of course, it's just been on with Daniel Radcliffe, and that didn't come to London, and that looked brilliant online. And in that time, we had one professional production in the late 60s, which Charlie Craw, the famous entrepreneur, I've probably told this story, British entrepreneur, saw it on Broadway, loved it so much, he came to London and bought a theatre and put it on for us. And it's never
without really trying.
Yes, and since then, we've never had a professional production, as far as I'm aware. So I've seen several amateur versions. I saw this amateur version. It wasn't in Edinburgh, it was in London. And once again, it's my favourite Frank Lesser. I know Guys and Dolls is always going to win the awards, but I like this one better. It's cornier, it's sillier, and that's probably why I like it. But it speaks. If you work in an office in any environment, you will understand the nature of this particular musical.
But I think How to Succeed came to Broadway at a time when Mad Men was very popular on television.
This last time round, yeah,
and
it did.
And I think they were trying to, the whole 60s ethos was very popular at that time.
There was a bandwagon for sharp suits, yes, absolutely. But why not bring it over to London? We watch Mad Men in this country. We've got The Hour, for goodness sake, which is, actually, I think that's a 50s thing, but it's, it's a kind of...
Old.
It's still aimed to be in a similar kind of audience. Yeah, no, it should have come to London. But I enjoyed this production a great deal, because even amateur versions showcase the score brilliantly, and some of those characters are clever enough and enjoyable enough to live again. So it's brilliant. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. They did it the company way, and I wanted them to do it the company way.
Well, thank you very much, Thos, for sharing your thoughts on 2012. 2013, I'm sure, will be a wonderful year on Musical Talk. Do continue to listen. We've got lots of...
I will, Nick. I might even appear on one or two of the episodes. Oh, you're not talking to me? All right, sorry.
We have a lot more coming up. So for more information,
some of which is bile.
Yes. Do follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/musicaltalk, or follow Thos on Twitter at musicaltalk. Not there, that's rubbish. At twitter.com/musicaltalk. Thos.
That's right. I don't do it very often, but when I do, I go through phases of doing a lot, and then I stop because I've been beaten into submission by something Jed would have said normally.
But you've got a smart telephone, Thos, so you can probably tweet when you're on the go.
I do. My field telephone does allow me to access the World Wide Web. The
Twittery.
Yes.
And of course, you can listen to all episodes at musicaltalk.co.uk. Thank you very much, Thos. It's been lovely to go down your...
Yes. Pockets, while I was talking?
Your memory lane.
Yes, thank you very much indeed.
And it's been a wonderful Odyssey. Thank you very much, Thos.
It's a pleasure, and it was very, very pleasant to walk down a dark alley with you as well.
This episode of Musical Talk was presented by Nick Hudson and Thos Ribbits. It was edited by Nick Hudson and is copyright Musical Talk 2013.